Hi everybody. Oh man, welcome. It's 1 o'clock. It's a weird time for me to be doing this, but I've been having a lot of trouble with my internet the last week or so at around 5 o'clock p.m., which is the time I normally stream. So I thought I'd stream a little earlier, which is weird because maybe you're thinking, but I'd rather have a little more time. Such is life. Luckily, these are all available on YouTube after the fact, and people can watch them. So it's another How to Start Stargazing. This one's for like end of September, mostly through October. We're going to be talking about a lot of October stuff. I'm trying to transition because the way I started it was a little weird to like end of and then the beginning of. So this is essentially our October one. So from here on out, this will be the October one. Next month will be the November one. Next one will be the December one. And the thing is that doing this every month, I wanted to train in stargazing tips, but also stargazing tips generally you don't learn from watching as much as you learn by doing. So what I'd like to transition this also into is less tips and more like here are the things that you can see and here's some interesting tools that I use. So for this month, what I thought I would do is we'd go over a little overview of what we've got in the night sky this October, and it's a little bit similar to what we had last month, but you know there's some new wrinkles on things, and then we'd shift over and talk about planets and other satellites and how things wander. And so we'll talk about natural and artificial satellites today and how we can go find them and some tools that I use to go find them, and you know what you might expect when you're going to look at these things. So let's start with Stellarium, which we've been starting with, you know, most times. So here's Stellarium. I'm gonna bring up Stellarium here for myself. There we go. All right, so once again, we're here. It's 1 o'clock p.m., so we've got the sun pretty high in the sky. I was just outside earlier, and right after I'm done with this, I'm going to go back outside and water the plants. This is perfect watering the plants time, but not great for looking at the stars because while they're there, the stars are there. And if we were to turn the atmosphere off, you'd see that the stars were there, right? Our own atmosphere causes this. Causes us to not be able to see the stars because the light in the atmosphere, the air in the atmosphere, and the molecules in the atmosphere, they refract the light and bend the light so that we see a lot of blue light refracted from the sky as the red light passes through, but the blue light is scattered away. So it scatters the light, we say. It's called Rayleigh scattering. It's pretty classic. You can see that they've simulated in Stellarium that it's a little less blue as you look towards the sun. That's because you're getting more of the red light. It's not scattering. It scatters mostly at an angle about 90 degrees from where the sun is, which is why, when you look in one specific direction, it looks a little bit bluer than the other. These are things you can look up on your own, but they're pretty straightforward. When kids ask, why is the sky blue? It's blue because the light from the sun has all wavelengths of light, but then when it interacts with molecules in the sky, in the atmosphere that we breathe in, but it's in our atmosphere, when it interacts with them, blue light likes to bounce away from, while red light likes to go straight through. And you can also tell this because if we head towards sunset, we're going to start seeing, so right now we're looking at the sun through some amount of atmosphere, right? But as you go towards the sunset, you actually look through look towards the sun through more atmosphere. So there's more atmosphere, because of the way that the atmosphere is, like an onion shell. And as you go towards the edge, it looks thicker than, like you're actually seeing it through a little bit more atmosphere, and it starts to look red. And so you're now seeing the same effect, which is that the light, as it passes through, a lot of the blue light is scattered away, and you're seeing more of the red light. It's just a little harder to see when the sky is directly above you. But we're here right after sunset. And let's start maybe at 9. How about 9? 9's a good time. Boom. So here's our sky at 9 o'clock tonight. We've already labeled a couple things here. I should turn off these labels, but it's not a huge deal. But essentially, this is 9 o'clock in the northern hemisphere. No matter where you are in the northern hemisphere, around 9, it should look a little bit like this. It might look a little different if you're farther north than I am or farther south than I am. If you're very far north, the summer means that at 9 p.m. it's still light out. We can simulate that by going, let's change our location and put us up in northern Canada. Right, so here you can see that the sun hasn't actually set, so the sun is setting and it's, 1753. Maybe it's not that bad. It's just 6, 7. So maybe we're past that part of the year. But if we go back to where I live, Tucson, which is a pretty Tucson, yes, it's America. Boom. Here we go. I'm confused as to why that wasn't doing the thing I thought it was. If I do Newcastle upon Tyne. So 2 in the morning, 1 in the morning, 23, 22, 21, 19. So it looks like it's 7. Sun is set by 8 o'clock, I guess. So it's a little bit later, but it's because it's closer to it's the autumnal equinox, so it's not as big of an issue. But if you go to summer, then it's not an issue. But for right now, ignore what I just said. If we go back to Tucson, and again make the sunset, set it back towards 10. I had 9 before, right? I think that's what I said. So let's do 9. Not too late. Pretty nice. Here's 9:05. We've got our blanket of stars. Now, again, we start every time we look at the stargazing, we start by figuring out which way north is. And once we know which way north is, and if you've done this the last couple of months, you should have a good idea which way north is, because you should figure out based on the house or apartment that you live in or where you're going out, which way north is, because that won't change, right? And so for me, I know that I'm going to go look north if I walk out the front door of my house, because it's facing north. So that's good, right? If I want to walk, I can just orient myself. Okay, the streets are going east-west here, so I just look, I'm standing in the street and I know, well, the sun's set in this direction, so north is going to be 190 degrees to the right there. But so we've got north, and the other thing we're going to look for is we're going to look for the Big Dipper. And the thing is, at 9 o'clock tonight, if we look towards the north, I can't really see the Dipper, right? It's not obviously apparent. If you're really good at knowing where the Dipper should be around this time of night, or if you have pretty good what I call eagle eyes, you can see that the eagle eye viewers down here would notice that this is actually the handle of the Dipper, but most of the Dipper is below the horizon, unfortunately, right now, which is interesting because it means you're going to have to use your other northern constellation to help you. And in this case, remember, generally, if you can't see the Dipper, you can see Cassiopeia. And so looking around in the north, can we find our big bright M or W? And in this case, it's right here. So hopefully you can see this right here, right? This is our W, this is Cassiopeia. And that, again, is opposite of the North Star, which is right here in the north. So like what we would be doing is be looking around to see if we could find either this M or this Big Dipper. That's generally what I do when I start off. You may not be able to find this M or W as easily because it's kind of hard when you're like, well, how big is it in the sky? Like you can see, if you zoom out, it looks smaller up here, but like generally when you're looking, it's pretty large, right? It's not the biggest. It's not as big as the Big Dipper, but it's pretty large and obvious. The stars are very, very bright. Other things you could be looking for right now that might help you is, remember, we're still in late, I guess we're in early autumn, but this is the summer to autumn transition. And so you can still see the summer triangle, which again is starting to show up in the summer, but really this is its time to shine. And here's a summer triangle directly above us. And so that's a pretty good way of also figuring out. So if you don't know which direction or anything is, you can orient yourself by looking straight up right now and looking for the summer triangle. We've talked about it the last 2 months, but here it is again. There's a short end and then two long ends. It's not an isosceles triangle. It's not really a right triangle either, but it's closer to a right triangle in that you've got, this kind of right angle here. And so that can help you tell which star is which, right? And so by looking for the one that's closer to the right angle, that's the Vega to Altair to Deneb, right? And so these, like if we rotate around, you can see that, from the other direction, it doesn't look like Deneb to Altair, this is a right angle. It looks more like this one is. But if it were a pure isosceles, it'd be kind of tough to tell the difference between the two. Just know that Vega's a little bit brighter in the sky, and it's also at the right angle side of this. And so we can find that to go, okay, well, if I know that, well, if I trace this direction between these two stars, that's going to go down towards the south here, south-southwest. If I trace this direction, Altair to Vega, you can trace that. That's going to trace over to the north-northwest and to the Big Dipper, which is a good way of helping you find the Big Dipper, is these two stars will help point towards those, right? Altair to Deneb over here points towards, as you can see, like right here, if I make the line, points a little bit below where Cassiopeia is. But you can use this, again, to help find your way around, right? That's the way of doing stargazing. Step one in how to start stargazing and understand stargazing is that you're going to want to orient yourself, figuring out which way north is and figuring out where in the sky are things that you can recognize. And the way that you start is just, what are the brightest things you can see? And the brightest stars you can see right now are some of these stars, which no matter where you are, if you're in Los Angeles right now doing this, you can go out and see these stars at night unless it's cloudy. Like, I lived in LA for many, many, many years. You can go outside at night and see Altair, Deneb, and Vega. You can also, right now, and this is the thing that, I've been imploring you in the kind of the focus of this week's episode, but you should 100% be looking to see some of the planets you can see. So if you look in the south-southwest, you'll see two pretty bright planets. Another planet you can see is Mars, and then also right now we've got the moon. And so a bunch of information about the moon right here, but if I zoom in, you can see the moon is actually it was just full just a little bit ago. So it's what we call waning. Waxing is where it gets larger, and waning is when it gets smaller. So it's waning, meaning that over the course of the next couple weeks, it will be less and less obvious to see it. I'm going to turn off some of the meteor showers because they're not as helpful right now. So these are some of the things we want to orient ourselves. I like orienting myself right now with the triangle here, but I also really just want to figure out which way north is generally, because that will help me do everything else. But once we have ourselves kind of oriented, well, hi, Kevin Wynn. Thank you for showing up. I am happy that it looks like my internet is being fine this time, although you'd have no idea about that, as this is presumably your first time watching. But I wanted to do this earlier in the day and help show off some of the things we can see this time. But I also wanted to show some tools off. So anyway, once we've figured out which way north is, we can then go to what we've done every week, which is our sky map. So again, I just went to skymaps.com and just downloaded the monthly sky map for October 2020. It says that it shows it in early October around 8 p.m. And so this is what the night sky should look like based on what we're seeing here. Let's see if this makes any sense. So if I open up this right here, we can look and sure enough, Ursa Major is pretty low on the horizon. Now you're saying, why isn't it below the horizon? Well, this is for a specific, as it says, it's a latitude of 40 degrees, right over here in the corner. Sky map shows how the night sky looks early October, 8 p.m., late October, 7 p.m. Sky map drawn for a latitude of 40 degrees north and 40 degrees north and 15 suitable, and is suitable for latitudes up to 15 degrees north and south of this. So, Tucson, where I live, Tucson, Arizona. Tucson latitude is 32.2, right? So Tucson's latitude is not 40. It's a little bit lower than 40, but it's suitable for it, right? So this is drawn at a different latitude, and that's going to dictate essentially how far this Polaris is and the whole sky is up and down from the horizon. And so where we live in Tucson, this is going to be a little bit lower the horizon, which means this pushes this down, and that's why you don't see, especially on top of the fact that for Stellarium, they're putting some trees and things over here in the way. Just a couple things going on. Also, I'm not exactly at 8 p.m. Like if I were to go back in time to 8 p.m., you're seeing it a little bit like it was there. So here, boom, almost exactly. So if we, make the sky map go away, you can see that now the Big Dipper is right over my head here and much farther from the horizon. But because that extra hour, it pushed it down this way. And so when the sky map, this is what it looks like at 8 p.m. Pretty close, right? We can take this sky map and we can rotate it by 180 degrees. We can rotate 90 degrees 180 degrees, boom. And so now you can see, pretty straightforward, there's the Big Dipper right where it should be, right where it should be. Here, I'll move my, right where it should be here. So watch this, and then see right above me, there's the Big Dipper, okay? Because we're putting, remember, the way that we hold sky maps is we hold it so that the direction we're looking at is what we can see down here where it says north, I'm trying to connect to skymaps.com block, where it says north, where it says south, where it says east, and then where it says west right here, right? So in this case, we're looking north, so we hold it so we can see and read the word north. If we were looking east, we'd rotate it so that this was the correct direction. Okay, pretty straightforward. But let's rotate this back so we can start looking at what we can see here. So transform it, reset the transform. Whoop, that's not what I wanted to do because that adds this. Whoops. Gosh, I've been doing this for months and months and months, and I should be better at it. But sometimes you just still fall into traps as you try to learn new skills. So once we've looked at, we know which way north is and stuff. We can remember, okay, here again is our summer triangle, right? 90 degrees-ish version is the Vega to Deneb to Altair, so that's right above us, which is what is shown in the very center of a sky map, is generally what's right above us. And so if we were, to also look for some other stuff, let's see if we can test ourselves. Can we find Pegasus? This is the thing that what you want to do when you do stargazing. Is you go, okay, well now I've kind of figured out some of the things. Let's see what's some other stuff. Remember last month we talked about the galaxy of Andromeda, and so that we want to look for the square of Pegasus and Andromeda. So let's start by looking for that. Let's go see if we can find that one. All right, so what we'll do then is we know, okay, one of the ways is between Vega and Deneb. It'll point downward. If I go from Vega over towards Deneb towards the east, I can find it somewhere in there, right? I can also say, all right, well, what's another way to find it? Well, if I go from where the Big Dipper is pointing to Polaris and keep going past Cassiopeia, I should be in the right neighborhood for Pegasus and stuff. So those are the two ways we can find it. So let's turn off our sky map and let's go back to Stellarium here and let's look up. Okay, so we're looking for the summer triangle. Boom, 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 boom. And so now I said that what we're going to want to do is I want to look between Vega and Deneb, starting from Vega and moving towards Deneb. And if I go this way, I should be going towards the east and looking towards the east. And so here's towards the east. And so can we see the great square of Pegasus? So again, Vega to Deneb should point down towards, whoops, it's hard to see because I get gimbal lock down here. And sure enough, here's a square that looks pretty Pegasus-y, right? Great square of Pegasus-y. And you also have your little things right here, these stars down here that are coming off, which is the head of Andromeda, right? And the other way I said we could do it is we're looking for the north over here, is we trace up this line that goes directly from the Big Dipper's pole stars up to the North Pole, past Cassiopeia. We should be also in the same neighborhood. And sure enough, we do it, and boom, we're right back in the same neighborhood. So no, two different ways we've come to the same group of squares, stars, right? And now you might say, well, why are those squares? Why not there's some other squares of stars? But looking around, there's not a lot of bright squares of stars. Maybe you might go, aha, but that's not really a square. This is like a pretty straightforward square. Now you're saying it doesn't look exactly like a square. You have to have some imagination in all of this every single time. But this is one of our guideposts that we can see when we use the sky map. You can see that guidepost, boom, 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 right there, right? And when you have that guidepost, and it's great to do this with another person because then you can look down at the sky map while they, are looking up at it so you don't lose your way. But you might say to the person next to you, okay, well now that I know where this is, where should I look next? And last month we talked about looking at Andromeda, and it's still great to look at Andromeda. In fact, it's even better because it's going to be easier to see in the early part of the sky. Right now is not great because the moon is pretty full, and so it's pretty bright at night. But in a couple weeks, you'll be able to see this early on, right after sunset. You wouldn't have to go, and it'll be pretty high up. But again, if you remember, we used the great square of Pegasus. We followed our way down where there's a couple bright stars down here, and the stars kind of point the way. These two stars point the way towards this right there, which is Andromeda. Okay, and you can see it on your sky map. If we turn the sky map back on, as this little let me drag myself up. This little lentil right there, that little thing that's just like this little circle, which again, we traced our way down and there are two stars that point right up to it. That's Andromeda as represented on here. It's the farthest thing you can see with your naked eye, so you have to forgive it that it's a little bit hard to see on here. If we zoom in, you can see that it actually, if it were, it would subtend a huge angle in the sky if we could see it. It's just very, very faint. All you're really going to be seeing is some of the bright core of it when you see it at all, right? Like, this is a pretty good representation, because maybe you're looking at this and you're like, I can't even see this at all. You know, that's, as I said, a pretty good representation of, whoops, turn the sky map off, of what you'd expect to see. Here, I'll do this again so that everyone can see, instead of having the sky map in the way. You know, this is what it would potentially look like. It'd be cool if you could see it this way, but generally all we see is the faint part of it. So you could imagine trying to find it right now on the screen. Okay, I'll give you a second. Can you trace out and find it on the screen? Because this gives you an idea of how faint it might actually be. So let's see, can you find it on the screen? There's some annoying star labels that I kind of wish I could turn off. And I don't remember how to do that easily. Markings, let's turn off. Sky, stars, labels and markers. There we go. Now you don't have the labels. Can you see it? Give you a couple more seconds before I point to it. The way I'm looking is I'm going to look for the square of Pegasus. Bink, 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 bink. Then I'm going to look for Andromeda coming off of it. Ding, 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 ding. If we turn the lines on, you can start to see. Whoops. Let's turn on the lines. So you're seeing right here. And then these two stars right here point to Andromeda right there. Ba-ba! Pretty straightforward. Ish. I get it. It might not be. You might be looking at this and going, I cannot. This is very difficult. It's a trained skill, like any skill. Okay? So, with that in mind, then, let's see what else from our sky map might be interesting to look at. The things to always look on a sky map, especially if you've been looking the last couple months, the new things, the things that are exciting and new, will be over on the east. Because generally, the way that if you look at the same part of the sky at the same time of night, if you go out at 8 p.m. each night, and look at 8 p.m. each night, 8 p.m. each night, the stars will all, as a group, move towards the west. Because as we're moving around the sun, that's the way that the constellations are going to be moving. Meaning that next month, if we look at this whole group of stars will be pushed over to the right, right? The summer triangle last month was over here on the left, right? And so these stars will slowly move their way over this way over the course of the month, same time of night. Right, because as we're moving around the sun, we're looking at different groups of stars at the same time of night. Like you could imagine this Earth moving around and rotating and pointing, and then a month later it's pointing over here, and a month later it's pointing over here, and a month later it's pointing over here. Meaning that some things that were right ahead of you are now going to be over towards the west this time. And so the new stuff each month is going to be down here. And some of the cool new stuff to look at, down here, over here. Some of the cool new stuff to look at are, we've got Cetus, which is kind of nice. We got Pisces, which is, your classic zodiacal constellation. The problem is like, these are cool constellations, and I'll show you them, but they are less than obvious to find in the night sky. There's not a lot of very bright stars. And you can tell, because on this sky map, they draw the lines between some of the really bright things with like the Great Square of Pegasus, really solid lines, right? But like all the little dots here, you can see that the dots represent star magnitudes, which is how bright the star is. The brighter it is, the more negative the number is, and the bigger the circle. These stars are pretty tiny little dinky dudes, right? Some of them, hardly any, like, are there any bright, there's like named stars in these? Mira, Difta, right? This is not the greatest set of stars to look at, right? Which is why it's kind of nice that you still have summer triangle, stuff if you need makeup. You still can go see Ophiuchus. You can still see the teapot. The the Scorpion is not visible anymore. That's a real good early summer constellation to look at. But generally, you still have some pretty cool things to see if you still haven't seen them. Aquarius, right? But there's just not a lot of really bright stars over in this part of the sky. The word Fomalhaut, I'm pretty sure that the word Fomalhaut, I'm going to have to look this up right now. It is, I think it means lonely. Gosh, I just want to double check. Oh no, it's just Fomalhaut is the mouth of the southern fish. Excuse me. But essentially Fomalhaut is one of the loneliest stars because there's just nothing super bright around it, right? The closest bright star might be, Aquila or Altair. There's just not a lot of really bright stars you're going to see, right? There's some that they've named, but Fomalhaut's not that bright. And these are the things in the east and southeast. So let's see if we can find something like can we find Pisces? Well, Pisces is a constellation that right now is pretty straightforward because Mars is in it. So let's look for Mars. Let's go find Mars, and then we'll find Pisces, hopefully. So Mars on our sky map, the way we would find that is we go look towards the east generally. So if we know which way north is, we look 90 degrees left of that. So let's go back and look north. Whoops. Let's go back and look north. Dip, 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 dip. So I know north because I'm looking for the Dipper, which is down here. So here's the Dipper, north. I'm going to look 90 degrees. Oh, man, time is going really fast there. Look 90 degrees to the right, excuse me. And look, there's Mars. Okay, so now we want to find Pisces. So let's bring up our sky map again. I'm going to put Mars over here. Thing is that Mars is making it hard to see a lot of the stars because the moon is really, really bright right now. The moon and Mars. So I'm going to put Mars over here, so it's over my head, and then I'm going to open up our sky map again. So Pisces should be some sort of V of stars with a couple circlets. Let's see if we can find that. You know, it's going to be tough. It looks like here we've got a V that comes up this way, and maybe this is a circlet, and another V that comes up this way, and maybe we've got another circlet over here. So this could be Pisces. So let's see if we guess. We see if we can guess. We'll turn it on. Oops, turn the sky map off. We can see the V that comes up this way, and it has a circlet right here, and then we can see a V that maybe there's a circlet over here somewhere. Let's turn on our lines and see if we're lucky. Ba-ba! Sure enough, here's our circlet. Here's our other circlet, meaning this is Pisces. Now you're saying, what is a circlet? What's Pisces? What the heck is this? Well, Pisces is a constellation that's two fish connected by a rope. So you have to have a really good imagination. Here's fish number one. Here's fish number two. You're saying, that doesn't look like a fish. Again, great imagination. And the line right here is the string that connects the fish. That's it. You can put the art on and see that the fish connected by the strings is in this art, but you got to have pretty good imagination. But like, look at how not bright it is, especially with the moon right now. It's gonna be really tough, right? Like with the moon here, they've changed and adjusted the brightness, and you can just barely see some of these stars and maybe where one of the circlets are in the other circlet. Pisces is not a super great constellation easy constellation to find. Sorry, the moon is right over my shoulder here. I should move out of the way. So here's the moon right here. So I would recommend that if you want to look for some of these fainter constellations, you go out in a really dark night or wait a little bit until the moon has kind of set. Now, Mars will have moved a little bit, so it might not be as easy, but Mars should be over in this part of the sky for the month. It might have moved a little bit, but generally it should be a good guidepost to find Pisces. Why would you want to find Pisces? Well, maybe you are a Pisces, and this is a really exciting thing for you. I'm a Virgo. I'm pretty excited every time I can see Virgo, because Virgo is also a pretty hard to trace out constellation. What else were we looking for? That's bad. Thank you, T. White. Woo! Oh, Tyler, I know you. Yes. Sometimes I screw that up. This is a work in progress. Anyway, I wonder when that went away. I guess I'll have to go back and find out, in which case I might have to write some captions or something for this. But what we were talking about was I may have just gone away when I was doing the whole of the story about the night sky here with all these constellations. Woof. But essentially, as the story, there's like a full story that ties together a lot of the constellations here. The story involves Cassiopeia, it involves her husband Cepheus, it involves her daughter Andromeda down here, it involves Pegasus, Perseus, which is over here, and this big sea whale. And we were looking, because this is the kind of the fishy part of the sky, we were looking to see whether or not we could find how long has there been no audio? Has there been no audio the whole time? That would be bad. Let's take a look. Let me listen. Nope. So it went away. What are we looking for? When did it stop? So I would recommend that if you want to look for some of these fainter constellations, you go out in a really dark night. Okay, so you mostly just missed me telling the story about constellations. In which case I might have to... Good, that's fine. That's fine. All right, so you mostly just missed me tell the story. It's not a huge deal. I'll tell the story one more time. The story of this part of the sky, is that Cassiopeia was very vain about her daughter's beauty. Her daughter Andromeda was very beautiful, but also had a lot of other skills and talents that really don't go in the story at all. Like no one ever talks about her, brilliant business sense and acumen and her ability to really solve problems that are, pretty tough. But we don't really talk about that. Mostly it's just talking about how pretty she was. Cassiopeia would walk around all day up and down the beach, tell everyone she was, my daughter's so pretty. I've got this pretty daughter. Oh, she's so pretty. And this eventually gets heard by the sea nymphs who are in the water, and they're like, oh my gosh, we're actually very pretty. excuse me. So, so they go to Poseidon, the king of the ocean, and they say, there's this lady, this queen, Cassiopeia. She keeps talking about her daughter, saying that her daughter is super duper pretty. She's all right, she's pretty, but you know, we're really pretty. I mean, we're not as good business-wise. We don't have as good political savvy as Andromeda does, but I mean, we're prettier. And Poseidon goes, you are prettier. This is upsetting to me. Why is she talking about her daughter being the prettiest thing in the world when when you guys exist, when you all exist as the sea nymphs, the prettiest things in the world? So he goes to Cassiopeia and says, Cassiopeia. Cassiopeia goes, yes. Oh, and Poseidon's like, it's me, Poseidon. I'm the king of the ocean. Cassiopeia goes, yes, you are. It's nice. Have you ever met my daughter? She's so pretty. And Cassiopeia goes, that's exactly, and Poseidon's like, that's exactly why I'm here to talk to you. You keep saying your daughter's the prettiest. My sea nymphs are the prettiest. They're the prettiest in the whole world. Your daughter is fine. She's very pretty, but, you know, sea nymphs, actually prettiest. And Cassiopeia's like, seen the sea nymphs. I mean, have you ever looked at a Starbucks coffee cup? They're like two-tailed weirdos. And Poseidon's like, I'm a little upset with you, and I have a proposition. I'd like for you to take your daughters and your daughter, and I would like you to chain her to a rock in the ocean, because I'm going to send a sea monster to come eat her. And so Cassiopeia, because this is a god, is like, I guess I've angered the gods. She goes to her husband, Cepheus, who only features in the story in this one moment, and Cepheus goes, well, I guess you got to do it. And so she goes, all right, and then chains her daughter to a rock. So here's Andromeda, and you might wonder why she's got this weird claw thing here. Maybe you're wondering, we're wondering why in my period of silence I was doing this claw thing. It's because I was actually representing the claw here. That's not a claw, it's her chained to a rock. So she's chained to a rock, she's trying to pulling herself away from this rock. And it turns out that in this moment, the sea monster Cetus starts to attack her, but then she's able to pull away from the rock and save herself, where she's run into this guy Perseus, who happens to have just been coming back from killing Medusa. He's actually got Medusa's head in his hands, and he's riding Pegasus, and they all three ride off to be happily ever after, where she, you know, lives a really great life as a person who doesn't ever get chained to rocks anymore. So that's the story that you missed. Thank you, Tyler. Appreciate that. The next thing I wanted to do was then show this group of stars right here, which is Aquarius, and the way that we'd found those stars was, again, we got to turn off the lines, but if we go and look here for the V next to the Mars right now, because Mars, again, will change its position, but for right now, Mars is pretty easy to find. You can trace this up to one of the circlets, and then if you keep going to the right, you can see the head of the water carrier and the bucket of the water carrier just to the left of that. And now you're saying, how are you able to see that? Well, we turn on our sky map one more time. We can see that someone's already drawn it out for us. Look for the circlet. Look for this like weird shape with the nose on it. Look for that. And you the way that I do it is I go outside with my sky map or with my app on my phone, and I go, and I look for it. And so in this case, I'm just doing that. Boom. Whoops. Boom. Now let's look for the V. Right? Well, we got the weird shape right here and the nose. And so this must be the head. And so if we look to the left of it, can we find something that looks like a little coffin that's the water jug? Yes. So if we turn this back on, boom, we found it. Great. So, as I was saying when I started this off, in the next 20 minutes, I want to show off the fact that, like, right now, in this image right here, there are, I'm losing frames right now. There are 3 planets you can see: Saturn, Jupiter, and Mars. And you might be saying, wow, that's pretty cool. Is that something that happens all the time? No. We're very lucky right now that based on the positions of the planets in our solar system, we have a couple planets that you can see pretty well at night. And these are them. They're some of the brightest you can see, so it's really nice. This right now is simulating about 10 o'clock. So if I back up here to essentially, you know, this is 8:20. We can go to 9. So here's 9. Right, south, southwest. So, you know, if we know which way north was, which is what we started today, and we turn 180 degrees and look behind us, these 2 bright objects, right? And this is a great time to look for these things because they're really, really obvious. One is really much brighter than the other. That's Jupiter. Jupiter is very, very bright. These objects will not twinkle because they're not stars. You're actually kind of barely able to resolve them at a point from a long distance away, but they're a little bit resolved. Oh man, I'm starting to really drop a lot of frames because my bitrate is going down. Oh no, this is what happens every single time. But then also, if we trace up the line that they go, we go out and we see Mars, which is a little bit red, and you can see it at night. And so these are 3 planets you can see. Now the question is, are there any other things we can see, between Jupiter, Saturn, Mars, and the Moon all in this one big line? It says Uranus, but you're not going to be able to see Uranus unless you have a telescope. Uranus is pretty tough. If we zoom in over here, we can see how long it takes before we see it. And so, you really zoomed in there quite a bit. You have to have a very dark sky before you start able to see it. But here's Uranus, just chugging through the sky. If you know where to look and you've got a telescope, you can see it. It's pretty cool to see, but it does require a telescope to see it. But the big question is, how do we see other things in the sky, right? I told you that at the beginning that I would be showing you, other satellites and other wanderers. So the way that we want to look at this is we want to think about the Earth as being surrounded by quite a few satellites. The Moon is the natural satellite, but it has a bunch of artificial satellites, which we've sent up ourselves. And these artificial satellites are sent up, and they're telecommunication satellites. They're, satellites that we've sent up to help us do our things. There's some satellites that do observations. There's some spy satellites, but there's a lot of these things. And there's also an International Space Station, which is a giant object that has people on it generally. So how can we track those? How can we find those? How can we look for the Earth's artificial satellites? Well, let's turn on the internet here. Ba-doom. So here's the internet, and I've put myself at this Google search where I've looked for heavens above, but you can just go to heavens-above.com right here. And so if we go here, you can see, we click on it, Heavens Above is like a pretty unattractive website, but it allows you to look for various, things. There's also an Android app, but look for various satellites. Okay, so let's see what we can do. First, when you look at this, you could log in, but I don't ever have a login right now. You could also change your observing location. So if you click on change your observing location, we can use a browser geolocation service. It's set to Tucson right now, but I'm going to just say search for Tucson, Arizona. And click to search. Gives me my results, Tucson, Pima County, Arizona. That's good enough for what we want. You could also put in your latitude and your longitude. You could also, this is kind of a really weird thing. I've never really used this, but there's this thing where it's the simplest way to look for a place is through 3 words. Clip, apples, leap is street addresses don't price. What 3 words are given? Every 3 meter square in the world, a unique 3-word address. The words are randomly assigned to each square and will always stay the same. Now it's easy to find and show locations with just 3 words, which is pretty weird. You could say I don't know, Disneyland Park. So here's Disneyland Park, and let's say we want to do Space Mountain. Can we look and get Space Mountains? This is the Space Mountain right there is limiting soap matter, and the next one is zips slid prongs and gathers baseline tape and verbs outdoor successor. And if you've never looked at this, it's a really goofy thing that I would recommend that you it's a way to I was discovered this because my wife's dad told us where he was at one point with the 3 words, and I was like, how do you search for those 3 words? But in this case, we could just put in Tucson and be fine. You don't need to get the exact 3 meter position for doing this. So if now we do that, we can click update, and sure enough, now we've got update. It has a live sky view, but let's start with the thing that's kind of the coolest one, which is when we click right up here, we click ISS. And what this gives is the visible passes of the ISS, right? And it tells you brightness, it tells you if it's visible, it tells you a bunch of stuff here, and you're saying, what is going on? Well, first off, these are the dates. So the 4th of October, the 5th of October, the 6th of October, 7th, 7th, 8th, 9th, which means this week there's quite a few cool passes, which is nice. And it tells you the brightness, -1.8, -1.8, -3.3. You want the most negative it is because that's the brightest it can get. You want to get a very, very bright observation. So in this case, what I would do is recommend maybe the 6th of October. And then you want to look and see what time it starts, right? Now, sometimes the start time, you'll be like, oh man, this is coming up, it's great. But the start time will be 3 in the morning. If you're a night owl or can't sleep, that's good. But for me, I like sleeping, it's great. So in this case, I might look for one of the ones where I can visit. So if I want to see these, if I want to see this one on the 6th of October, I only have to go out at 1909, which is 7:09. So you just have to go outside at 7:09 and look where it is. So let's click on this 6th of October. Boom. And it gives you a star map. kind of similar to the star massive you're looking at. Made by a different company, but it's fine. I mean, made by the heavens above. And what this shows you is the direction and where the object will be and at what time, right? So right now you're seeing 712, 708, 709, 710, 711, 712, 713. This is where the International Space Station will be on the 6th of October at 7 p.m. Meaning if I go outside at 7 p.m. from where I live and I look towards the northwest at around 7:08, 7:09, I will see this thing. It comes through the Big Dipper. It passes by the North Star right here, almost the Cassiopeia. This is a pretty straightforward thing to look at, right? Let's look at the one I can see tonight. So like tonight, it's the 4th of October. This is at 7:08 p.m. Similarly, very similar, but pretty low on the horizon. It's pretty hard to see this. But eventually, it comes up pretty nice. And so this is my task for you. Look up where you live. Like, let's say you live in like someplace else. Let's see how it changes for change your observing location. Let's say you live in, say, New York City, or that's too far. Let's say you live in Minneapolis. So we search for that. Oh man, my bitrate's come back. Oh, thank God. There. And if I update that, so now we're in Minneapolis, Minnesota, and I click on ISS. Well, 4th of October, click on it. Oh man, it's an even better, easier to see version. Tonight, in Minneapolis, if you go out at 7:30, 7:31, 7:32, 7:33, 7:34, 7:35, you're gonna see this thing just zooming by, right? So notice, it's not the same for everyone in every part of the country. It's different dates, different times and stuff, because what you're essentially seeing when you see the International Space Station is this big set of mirrors that are pointing down. And so depending on where they are and where you are on the Earth, sometimes the mirrors aren't reflecting the light to you. But this website will let you figure out where, based on where you are and what time of night it is, how everything's pointed towards you, which is pretty cool. And so, like, if I go back and change my observing location again, gosh, hopefully everyone is back to Tucson. Click update. Man, my bitrate is really having a field day right now. Luckily, we're only about an hour left in this. Oh, and we're back. And if I click on, there's other things, 10-day predictions for satellites of special interests. There's other things that you can click on here. So you can also click on things like the Hubble Space Telescope. So the Hubble Space Telescope is not nearly as bright. Notice the brightness is given in magnitudes that are not negative, they're positive. And so what you're seeing here is that you're seeing it's actually something that's fairly dim compared with, you have to have a pretty dark sky, but if you were to click on this is also at 4 in the morning, you're seeing that it's just barely over here on the horizon. Not too easy to see. If we look at the brightest one, which is going to be this 2.1 down here on the 13th of October, you can see that even then it's pretty low on the horizon going by Jupiter and Saturn. Probably not very easy to see. But if you've got a really dark place that you live at, that might be something to look at. Other things are North Korean satellites, daily predictions for brighter satellites. If I click on that, you can see a bunch of other bright satellites. And so some of these, how bright? Minimum brightness, let's say minimum brightness of 3. Click update. And so here are some of these. The ISS is one of the brighter things you can see, but there's also another one here that's 1.6. You want the smaller the number, the easier that you're going to be able to see it. And so in this case, looking for these things like right here, this breeze tank, there's a satellite passing, right? Just like this. So this is a thing where I like to do this if you're going to be out with friends, if you're maybe going to be out outside at night for some sort of, like, maybe going with your friends to sit in their back patio or something and socially distance, see them. Like, it's kind of fun to look up, is the International Space Station going to be visible? Are there going to be satellites visible? But also, you don't need to look up things. You could just go outside at night. If you've not ever gone outside at night and just looked up, you start to see satellites moving across the sky. Planes will fly across the sky and they'll blink, flicker, blink, 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 blink. That's a plane because it's got lights on it you can see that are flickering. But satellites, essentially they're going to go and then eventually they'll disappear because they're reflecting the light from the sun to our eyes. And so at a certain point that reflection is not going to be as easy to see. The glare is not going to be as bright because it's just, at a different angle towards our eyes. Okay? But my bitrate is really starting to vary quite a bit. So I think I'm going to finish here. But my recommendation for you and for everybody watching, is that right now you should go outside and look for the International Space Station. Go on the heavens above, find when the International Space Station is going to be visible, find the brightest time it's going to be visible. Hopefully you get really like, you know, the negative 3.8, it's really bright, and then go out and look for it. So on the 9th of October, I can go out and like, that's just such an obvious, easy one to look at. That's like 6:23 to 6:30. If I go out at 6:23 to 6:30 and just look like almost directly above me, I'll see the International Space Station. I just got to go out and make sure. So you can just set an alarm, right? Like just go and set an alarm for like 6:20 right now on the 9th for me here living in Tucson, and I'll just go outside, get my phone will go, I'll walk outside and you'll watch it. It only takes a couple minutes. It's pretty incredible to see, and you've done an amazing job of predicting when an actual satellite will have flown across the sky, which is pretty incredible. So I think that with that, I'm going to finish. Hopefully, my bitrate has not meant that I've lost completely the entirety end of this thing right now. This is an annoying thing about streaming and stuff, and it may mean that I have to start switching just recording